Life has a way of teaching us the most profound lessons through the most challenging circumstances. Looking back now, I can see how every struggle shaped me into who I am today. I'm Victoria Winters, and for as long as I can remember, I lived in the shadow of my older sister, Margaret. Margaret was 5 years older than me, and in our parents' eyes, she could do no wrong. She was their golden child, their perfect creation. While Margaret attended the prestigious Riverside Academy, I was enrolled in the local public school. Our parents, Thomas and Eleanor Winters, weren't exactly struggling financially. They owned a successful real estate agency in Manhattan, but somehow there was never enough money for both of us to have the same opportunities.
Mom, Dad, I got the lead role in the school play.
I remember Margaret bursting into the living room one evening, waving her script triumphantly.
Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We need to get you private acting lessons right away.
That's my girl. We'll hire the best coach in the city.
I sat in the corner, quietly sketching in my worn notebook, trying to make myself invisible as usual. I was 12 at the time, and I just won first place in the school art competition. But I didn't even bother mentioning it. I already knew what they'd say. Art was just a hobby, they'd tell me. I needed to focus on something practical, something that could provide a stable future. It wasn't until my 13th birthday that everything changed. That was the day I met Ms. Rose, my first real art teacher. She wasn't just any teacher. She was a retired gallery curator who taught art at the community center, and she saw something in my sketches that even I couldn't see yet. That first art class with Ms. Rose opened up a whole new world for me.
Victoria, there's raw talent in these lines. The way you capture emotion in your subjects. It's quite remarkable for someone your age.
I still remember how those words made my heart soar. For the first time, someone was seeing me, really seeing me. Ms. Rose didn't just teach me techniques. She taught me about the great artists, their struggles, their triumphs. Every Saturday morning, I would rush to the community center, my worn sketchbook clutched to my chest. Those 3 hours became my sanctuary.
Art isn't just about talent, Victoria. It's about persistence, about telling your truth through every brushstroke.
At home, things continued as they always had. Margaret's achievements dominated every conversation, every space. The walls of our living room had become a shrine to her accomplishments. Debate team trophies, academic certificates, theater awards. My own small victories remained confined to my bedroom walls, hidden like secrets. But then there was grandmother Clara. She was my mother's mother, but sometimes I wondered if she'd been switched at birth. She was so different from Mom. Unlike my parents, Clara saw beyond the surface. She noticed things others missed.
Come here, sweetheart. Show me what you've been working on lately.
Her cozy brownstone in Brooklyn became my second sanctuary. The sunlight in her garden room was perfect for painting.
You know, when I was young, I wanted to be a painter too.
But times were different then. She told me this one afternoon as she watched me work, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of pride and something else, determination, I'd later realize.
We all have gifts, Victoria. The trick is finding someone who believes in them as much as we do.
One Saturday afternoon, to my surprise, Clara showed up at my art class. She and Ms. Rose talked in hushed tones while I worked on my latest piece, their conversation punctuated by occasional glances in my direction. Later that evening, at Clara's house, she sat me down with a cup of hot chocolate.
Victoria, dear, Ms. Rose tells me you have extraordinary potential. She believes you could have a real future in art.
I held my breath, waiting for the usual, but that followed any discussion about my art.
So, I've made a decision. That spare room upstairs, it's yours now. We're going to turn it into your studio.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A studio of my own? Over the next few weeks, Clara and Ms. Rose transformed the dusty spare room into an artist's paradise. An easel stood by the window, catching the perfect northern light. Shelves lined with art supplies stretched across one wall. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was truly mine. Years passed this way, weekdays enduring my parents' indifference, weekends split between Ms. Rose's classes and my studio at Clara's. I was 17 when Margaret came home from college with news that would change everything.
Mom, Dad, I'd like you to meet Richard. We got married last weekend.
The living room fell silent. I watched from the doorway as my parents processed this bombshell.
Married? But sweetie, we didn't even get to plan a wedding.
It was very spontaneous. We just knew it was right. Richard's charming smile seemed to melt my parents' initial shock. Within minutes, they were welcoming him to the family. That evening, Margaret dropped another bombshell over dinner.
So, Richard and I were thinking, could we stay here for a while? Just until we get on our feet.
Of course, sweetheart. You can stay as long as you need.
I watched in disbelief as my parents rearranged our entire household to accommodate them. Within days, Richard had taken over the living room as his office, though I never saw him actually working. One evening, 2 months later, my father called me into his study. The serious look on his face made my stomach drop.
Victoria, we need to discuss your college fund.
I sat perched on the edge of the chair, a familiar sense of dread creeping over me.
Your mother and I have decided to give your college money to Margaret and Richard. They're starting a family, and they need it more.
The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The college fund I'd been counting on, my ticket to art school, was being handed to Margaret. Again. But what about my education? I've already applied to art schools.
Don't be selfish, Victoria. Your sister is married now. She has real responsibilities.
We really appreciate this. We promise to make good use of it.
His smug smile made my blood boil.
And Victoria, we think it's time you started contributing to the household.
He placed a suitcase at my feet, its meaning clear as crystal. I stared at the suitcase, its presence more final than any words. My own parents were choosing Margaret over me one last time. You're kicking me out? Just like that?
You're 18 now, Victoria. It's time you learned about the real world.
Through the wall, I could hear Margaret and Richard discussing their plans.
Oh, we can turn Victoria's room into a nursery. I've always wanted a mint green theme.
Without another word, I grabbed the suitcase and went upstairs. I had 1 hour to pack up my entire life. As I methodically filled the suitcase with clothes and art supplies, my mind was surprisingly clear. Perhaps I'd always known it would end this way. I took only what was truly mine: my art supplies, my portfolios, the small savings I'd earned from commission sketches. The walk to Grandmother Clara's house felt like a dream. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the weight of my suitcase seemed to grow with each step. When I reached her door, I didn't even have to knock. She was already there, arms open wide. Oh, my dear girl, I've been expecting this day. That's when the tears finally came. All the hurt, all the rejection I'd bottled up over the years came pouring out. Clara held me until the sobs subsided, then led me to her kitchen. Now, let's have some tea and make a plan. Your story isn't ending, Victoria. It's just beginning. As we sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by the smell of chamomile tea and fresh-baked cookies, Clara pulled out her laptop. First things first, those art school applications you submitted? We're going to see them through. I stared at her in disbelief through my tear-stained eyes. But Clara, without the college fund. Don't you worry about that. I've been saving for this day since you first showed me your drawings. The next morning, Miss Rose arrived with a determined look in her eyes. I've made some calls.
The director of the Art Institute wants to see your portfolio in person.
Over the next few weeks, my life fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were spent preparing my portfolio with Ms. Rose's guidance. Afternoons, I worked at the local cafe to contribute something to Clara, despite her protests. Evenings were dedicated to painting in my upstairs studio. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, the email arrived.
Well, open it, dear.
My hands trembled as I read the words. Dear Ms. Winters, we are pleased to offer you admission to the Art Institute's class of 2024. I couldn't read further through my tears of joy. Clara and Ms. Rose hugged me tight, their own eyes glistening.
See? Talent always finds its way.
That evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on a new painting, Clara appeared in my studio doorway.
Victoria, I want you to remember something. Success isn't just about talent. It's about resilience.
Art school was everything I dreamed of and more. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language. In my first week, I met James, a fellow freshman with a passion for abstract expressionism. His energy and enthusiasm were contagious. Hey, you're Victoria, right? Your piece in the student gallery is incredible. Want to grab coffee and talk about your technique? James became my first real friend at school, and soon introduced me to a whole circle of aspiring artists. One day, during our regular coffee meetup, he shared news that would change my trajectory. The Sterling Gallery is looking for interns. It's entry-level stuff, but it's a foot in the door. We should both apply. Between classes, assignments, and my internship at Sterling Gallery, time flew by. My art evolved, becoming bolder, more confident. Mr. Sterling, the gallery owner, took notice of my dedication.
Victoria, how would you feel about displaying some of your work in our upcoming New Artist Showcase?
I couldn't believe my ears. This was my chance, my first real exhibition. Every weekend, I'd visit Clara, showing her my latest works and sharing my experiences. Her pride was palpable.
You're blooming, my dear, like a flower that finally found its sunlight.
The night of the showcase arrived. My hands trembled as I adjusted one of my paintings for the 100th time. That's when I heard a familiar voice that made my blood run cold.
I can't believe it. My little sister, the artist.
I turned to find Margaret standing there, looking perfectly polished in designer clothes. She was alone, no sign of Richard. Margaret, what are you doing here?
Mom and Dad mentioned you were having some sort of art show. I was curious to see what all the fuss was about.
Her eyes scanned my paintings, a mixture of skepticism and something else. Was it envy?
These are actually good. I mean, really good. How much are they selling for?
Before I could answer, Mr. Sterling appeared at my side.
3 pieces have already sold, Ms. Winters. Your sister is making quite a splash in the art world.
Margaret's expression shifted, the familiar competitive gleam returning to her eyes.
You know, Victoria, Mom and Dad are really struggling. Richard left, and they've been helping me with the baby.
So that's why she was here. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. I'm sorry to hear about Richard, but I can't help.
Come on, Vic. After everything they did for us growing up.
I couldn't help but laugh. A sharp, bitter sound that made nearby guests turn their heads. Everything they did for us? You mean everything they did for you? They gave you everything, Margaret. The best schools, endless opportunities, and finally, my college fund.
I had a baby on the way. I needed that money.
And what happened to it? Where's Richard now? Margaret's face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw through her perfect facade.
He took most of it when he left. Said he had a business opportunity in Vegas.
The anger I'd held onto for so long began to fade, replaced by an unexpected pang of sympathy.
Victoria, The art critics from the Times have arrived. They're eager to meet you.
I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The designer clothes couldn't hide her exhaustion, the dark circles under her eyes. Margaret, stick around. We'll talk after the show. Later that night, over coffee in a quiet corner of the gallery, Margaret opened up about everything.
I'm sorry, Victoria. I was so caught up in being the perfect daughter. I never saw how unfair it all was.
It wasn't your fault. We were both just playing the roles they gave us. In that moment, something shifted between us. The competition, the resentment. It all felt so pointless now.
I don't know what to do now. I'm a single mom, living with our parents, and I feel so lost.
Something in her vulnerability reminded me of myself, not so long ago. You know, there's a position opening up at the gallery. Administrative work, but it comes with daycare benefits.
You do that? Help me after everything?
Let's just say I learned from grandmother Clara that helping others heal can heal you too. 2 weeks later, Margaret started her new job at Sterling Gallery. It wasn't easy at first, but she threw herself into learning everything she could. Watching her bond with my art world friends, seeing her confidence grow, I realized something profound was happening. One evening, as we were closing up the gallery, Margaret stopped in front of my latest painting.
This one. It's about us, isn't it? The two sisters, back to back, but finally seeing each other.
I smiled, touched that she'd understood the symbolism. That weekend, I took Margaret to meet Ms. Rose, who still taught at the community center. To my surprise, Margaret fell in love with the ceramics class.
I never knew creating something with my own hands could feel so freeing.
One sunny afternoon, while I was helping Margaret set up her small ceramics exhibition in the gallery's community space, we received unexpected visitors. Our parents stood awkwardly at the entrance, looking out of place among the artwork.
Margaret told us about her show and about how you helped her.
I felt Margaret tense beside me, but I squeezed her hand reassuringly.
Victoria, we were wrong about so many things.
The apology hung in the air, fragile as blown glass. It took me a long time to realize that your approval wasn't what I needed. I needed to believe in myself.
Your grandmother taught you that, didn't she?
I nodded, feeling Clara's presence in every brushstroke on the walls around us.
Mom, Dad, come see what I've been working on. Victoria's been teaching me about color theory.
As I watched Margaret proudly show our parents her ceramic pieces, I saw real interest in their eyes for the first time. They were finally seeing us, both of us, for who we really were. A year later, Sterling Gallery hosted its biggest show yet, a joint exhibition featuring my paintings and Margaret's ceramics. Clara, now using a cane but still sharp as ever, beamed with pride as she toured the gallery. Look at my girls, both artists in your own unique ways. Our parents attended too, more subdued than before, finally learning to listen more than they spoke. The centerpiece of the exhibition was our collaborative piece, my painted backdrop flowing seamlessly into Margaret's ceramic installation.
The Winter Sisters have created something extraordinary here, a testament to healing through art.
After the successful show, I started a mentorship program at the gallery for young artists from underprivileged backgrounds. Margaret joined me in this endeavor, teaching ceramics workshops while juggling her gallery duties and motherhood. One day, as we were setting up for a youth art workshop, Margaret turned to me.
You know what's funny? We spent so many years competing when we could have been creating together all along.
I looked around at what we'd built. Not just art, but a community, a place of healing and growth. Clara's words from years ago echoed in my mind. We all have gifts. The trick is finding someone who believes in them as much as we do. She was right, as always. Sometimes the greatest gift
isn't the talent you're born with, but the courage to share it with others.